Okay. So next is the presentation of the faults of the afflictions. And so here I'm just quoting from the Venerable Tenzin by Namjong. It says, when an affliction arises, at first it completely afflicts the mind, causing you to err with regard to what you're observing, reinforcing your latent proclivities and causing the same affliction to recur. It may harm you, others, or both. It leads to misdeeds in this life, in future lives, or in both. It creates experiences of pain and anguish, as well as the sufferings of birth and the like. It takes you far from nirvana. Your virtue is destroyed, and your resources are depleted. In society, you feel apprehensive, joyless, and devoid of confidence, while your notoriety spreads in all directions. Notoriety, bad reputation. And excellent persons, such as teachers and protectors, rebuke you. You die with regret, your aims are unfulfilled, and after death, you are reborn into a miserable one. Okay, pretty self-explanatory there. Then goes on. There's some quotations in the Bodhisattva Charipataka about the faults of the afflictions as well. So let's also just go through those. Enemies such as hatred and craving have neither feet nor hands, and are neither brave nor intelligent. How then have they enslaved me? When they dwell within my mind, they are pleased to do me harm. They are not to be endured without anger. Tolerance of them is ridiculous. If even all the deities and demigods should rise up as my enemy, they cannot lead me or force me into the fires of unrelenting hell. But this powerful enemy of the afflictions cast me in an instant into fire so hot, if they met even Mount Meru, not even ashes would remain. The enemy that is my afflictions has lasted a long time without beginning or end. No other enemy has the power to last for such a long time. Given appropriate service and attention, everyone helps you and makes you happy. But if you serve your afflictions, they only inflict further suffering. Okay? So, then, what do? We see all the faults of the afflictions. So then, there's some advice that comes from one of the great Tibetan masters, Gombola. And so here is the roadmap for dealing with it. Right? So here he says, to eliminate the afflictions, you must know the afflictions' faults, their characteristics, their remedies, and the causes for their arising. After you have recognized their faults, regard them as defective and consider them enemies. If you do not recognize their faults, you will not understand their enemies. Therefore, it is said that you should reflect upon this, following what is said in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras and engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds. Okay, so that first passage that I read from Namjong's Lamrim Chenmo, that was a kind of commentary of the faults of the afflictions as presented in that first text, the ornament from Mahayana Sutras. And then those stanzas from Bodhisattva Charipataka, that's the engaging in Bodhisattva's deeds. Okay? So, then Gompoa says, study Vasubandhu and Asanga's text on knowledge as well in order to understand the characteristics of the afflictions. At least study Vasubandhu's explanation of the five aggregates. Once you know the root and secondary afflictions, then when any attachment, hostility, or such arises in your mind stream, you can identify, thinking, this is that, now it has arisen, and fight the affliction. Okay? So, that's why we did what we did in today's presentation, right? We went over identifying the afflictions, their characteristics, and their faults, right? And then here at the end, he says, fighting the affliction. So still, it's a bit, how do we do that? We need a little bit more. And so what I thought, we had the causes of the afflictions we talked about, the 6 causes. And so then, since we don't want to experience the effect, right, of the afflictions, then we need to deal with the causes of the afflictions. And so here, we can go through the 6 causes and then think about what we can do to fight each of those in turn. Okay. So remember, we were saying the basis of the affliction is the imprints within our mind. Right? And on the one hand, those imprints, since they were accumulated in past lives, there's relatively little we can do. We can't go back in time. But there are some purification practices that we can do that can purify the previous imprints of negativities. And we talked about the so-called 4 opponent powers in different contexts. This is the way one purifies previously accumulated negative karma. And within that, there is this resolve, right, not to do such an action again in the future. And yeah, that is very important to kind of reaffirm one's commitment to not act in the ways one has acted in the past. But in general, all 4 are, there's the power of regret, which is to recognize the negative things that we did, and also the negative minds that impelled us to do those actions as being negative. And that itself is very helpful, very, very powerful. And then they say the power of refuge. So, we talk about refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which is basically to affirm our commitment to practicing in accordance with the Buddhist teachings. And then the actual remedy is to do some kind of virtuous action to counteract non-virtue we've done in the past. And then lastly, what we talked about, the resolve not to do actions in the future. So by doing that, we can purify the imprints of previous negativities. But most important for like the future is having that resolve to act differently. That's going to be very helpful for us. So then the second cause was the object. And then knowing that certain objects allow or kind of trigger the afflictions, then we should try as much as we can to limit contact with those objects that trigger the afflictions. So yeah, you can think about it. And let's just take a simple example. If we're trying to eat healthier, right? We have a lot of attachment to junk food. Then, best thing, not have any junk food in your house. Yeah. Much easier than to have the chocolate or the potato chips. By the way, I don't know what kind of snacks you had here, but we had potato chips and chocolate here. So we're already not practicing what we preach. We did have grapes as well, so that's at least good. Anyway, so yeah, limiting our contact with the objects that trigger the afflictions. And, sometimes that can even mean if there's certain difficult people that we, that push our buttons, so to speak. Although overall in the Mahayana teachings. We're trying to practice compassion and loving kindness toward all sentient beings. But sometimes we need to kind of take a break from certain difficult people, and that's okay. But if we do that, don't do that with the thought, I've had it with that person, forget about them, but rather putting it on oneself and to think, okay, in my current level of development, my practice of patience is not developed enough that I can deal with this person in a constructive manner. Therefore, I'm going to limit contact with this person until I bolster my practice of patience. And then I'm going to come back and engage with this person in a more fruitful manner. As we say often, everything depends on our motivation. So even temporarily kind of pause relations with someone can be done with a good motivation. Okay. Then we have the social context, right? So we're saying how our friends influence us. So then the antidote to that is have a good social circle. And there's a saying that's very common in these, productivity bloggers, self-improvement bloggers, and so forth, that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is rooted in an observation made by someone who worked with the some primates, maybe gorillas or something, and they noticed, that you basically become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you, let's say you want to get into shape, right? If you spend time with other friends who are very diligent in going to the gym and eating healthy and all these, then they're going to be a good influence on you. So, yeah, that's good. Then explanation. We're saying that one cause of the afflictions is to have these kind of wrong explanations. And someone in the chat actually found the quote from Oscar Wilde. Yes. The only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. Okay. So by the way, Oscar Wilde. I think that is from his book, The Portrait of Dorian Gray. So I'm not sure he really thought that, or as the author of the book, he put those words into the mouth of one of his characters. Okay, so I'm not casting any aspersions on him. But in any case, being more discriminating with the information sources that we consume. And this is especially important in the age of social media, where there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and even in the kind of, let's say, self-improvement, kind of new age spirituality, right? So one of my, a very famous teacher, Zonsa Kensei Rinpoche, some of you may know him. He said one of the problems actually with the quote unquote spiritual teachers today is that they don't have the courage to give the students what they need, and instead they're too focused on giving them what they want. Right? So you can imagine, right, these kinds of teaching, right? Okay, to subdue the afflictions, right? to especially combat attachment and make a big transformation like this. It's hard work, right? To be disciplined and spend many hours of meditation. It's hard work. So you can see the allure, right? Then there's some teacher out there saying, hey, don't worry about all that, you know? Be true to yourself. If you want chocolate, have chocolate. If you want to, whatever it is, just do that, right? Nice. So then they can maybe get a big following. They can maybe become very famous. And maybe some of these, teachers out there, they're very charismatic, and they're telling you something that's like, oh, nice. You mean I don't have to, control my anger? I don't have to control my attachment, and I can just give in? Then, yeah, a little bit difficult. Sometimes what Tenzin Namjong is saying, sometimes, the experience you need to have for your growth, your development, is a very raw experience. It's going to show you things about your mind that is painful. Most of the time, we don't like pain. We don't like to look at things about ourselves and confront those inner demons. So, he says, finding a spiritual teacher is like finding an assassin for the ego. Anyway, so that all is just to say, be careful. Be careful about what we consume, because there are, of course, charlatans out there that are going to try to take advantage of you. Then there could be people who maybe intend well, they have a good motivation, but due to their own sort of lack of experience, their lack of understanding, I fit in this camp, right? Actually, Atisha, a very great Indian master, he said it's very, very, very difficult to benefit sentient beings before you've attained clairvoyance, right? So even, people ask me for advice. I have good intention most of the time, but I don't have the clairvoyance to see what's actually going to help. This is one of the particular skills of the Buddha. Because he has the omniscient mind, when one asks a question to the Buddha, he sees exactly what answer would be most effective for you at that time. Short of that, then they say even very advanced bodhisattvas, means someone not yet a Buddha, but quite advanced on the path, they still make mistakes. So yeah, hopefully when we say fighting the afflictions, these explanations, it's talking about the very gross, distorted explanations that give rise to further afflictions. I would hope that if at least you are going to teachings or attending lectures online with people who have had some study and practice, they're not going to be distorting Buddhism to the point where your afflictions are going to increase, right? So I hope that that doesn't happen with me. Okay. Next. Okay. Habituation was the next cause of the afflictions, and this, it tends that we have habits all of the afflictions, right? When someone says something nasty to us, we're instantly triggered. We want to say something back. So again, part of what we're doing with the mindfulness practice is we allow those things to arise, but kind of calming the reactive mind, not letting those triggers propel us into an immediate action. So we're going to gradually come out of our habits, our negative habits, one day at a time, and then replace with new ones. So also, I have four kind of maybe things we can start with. Trying to practice gratitude rather than always being dissatisfied. So this is a practice that's become very popular. The gratitude journal. You've heard of this? Gratitude journal, especially in the morning as we wake up, to think of 3 things that we're grateful for, and don't just leave it at that. But they found that we can change our habits. We can change the way we perceive the world when we are thinking of things to be grateful for, right? Rather than thinking of the things that we lack or thinking of the things that are sources of dissatisfaction. We can kind of retrain our minds. Yeah, so that's very good. And then also with others, maybe our coworkers, maybe I don't know, the people that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, to learn how to kind of appreciate the good qualities, look for the good qualities and appreciate them, rather than constantly judging and looking at their faults and shortcomings. Yeah. And then to practice contentment with what we do have, rather than constantly craving for more, right? So maybe it's worth saying now, but there's a particular kind of affliction. Well, it's craving. And there's people that then go into this kind of, they call it retail therapy. You heard about this, right? Retail therapy. People that are shopping online constantly, right? As a means of therapy, they buy something, and then what happens, right? It's with any kind of craving, actually. We were talking, was it last night or today, where the craving, it's like until we get that object of craving, we make a deal with ourselves to be miserable. And then we're pining after the object. Okay, we get the object, some relief, we feel good, but that doesn't last very long, right? Impermanence. Then we need the next one, and then the next one, and so forth. So to kind of overcome this, to cultivate contentment, and then actually, this is a good one. We can use this analytic wisdom, right, to think. I don't know. Someone I knew had, let's say, 200 pairs of shoes. Okay? Yeah, 200 pairs of shoes. Then you can think, really, you think you're unsatisfied with 200 pairs, and now you're thinking 201, then you're going to find the satisfaction you seek. Think that's likely? If you're not satisfied with 200, you're not going to be satisfied with 201. Guaranteed. So like this, we can sort of analyze what our craving mind is telling us in that moment and say, okay, Yes, I am feeling this urge to buy another pair of shoes, but let me see what's behind that. Let me look. Now, remember, we were separating on the meditation cushion where we will allow the craving to arise and watch it, right? But there's other times when we use analysis to get behind the craving, right? Deep dive into it. Okay. And then, yeah, 4, celebrating the good versus focusing on the bad. This I found, with oneself is a good practice. So also, of course, with others, appreciating rather than judging. But sometimes we can be our own harshest critics, right? And things are mostly good, but there's a little mistake we make, and then we're very focused with ourselves on that mistake, and we get into this very negative mindset toward ourselves. So instead, to look, of course, it's good to have the wisdom that is able to distinguish between both. And one practice that's very good at night is to think over our day, and like one of the Kadamba masters of old, throughout the day actually, to watch the mind, that he used to put stones, a white stone for every good action, and then a black stone for every negative action, right? And then, a modern day management guru, Peter Drucker, said, we manage what we measure, right? So just by, measuring those actions, keeping tabs on things, then we're sort of more mindful throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, we see that big pile of black stones, the okay, something has to change here. And gradually we can shift our actions. Okay. Now, one thing on that, as we talk about habituation, I use this word gradually, and this is also important, probably worth mentioning now. You see, we're trying to become fully enlightened Buddhas, right? Trying to become perfect. Okay. So a few things to keep in mind. One, it's going to take probably a long time. Means long time isn't 20 years, 30 years. We're talking lifetimes, maybe eons, right? So be kind of far-sighted in this undertaking, right? And recognize we're going to have slip-ups. We're going to make mistakes, and that's part of being unenlightened beings as we are. So oftentimes, we're really hard on ourselves afterwards, and then we can totally give up, right? Again, using a diet analogy, right? We're trying to eat healthy, cut out sugar, right? And then one day we eat the whole thing of ice cream, and then we feel so bad the next day. We're like, okay, I can't do it, and then we just throw away our diet altogether. And we're like, okay, I'm just gonna eat ice cream now, right? Okay. So one saying that I like about this is, even the habits we're trying to enforce and cultivate, we might have a slip up one day, but just as they say, dust yourself off and get back up on the horse, right? So then make sure the next day we continue. Don't let one day of slip up then turn into we just give up on the whole practice. Okay. All right. Then lastly here, the attention. And we touched on this before, but when we have the affliction, then it's a distorted view of reality, seeing the negative person as 100% negative, seeing the attractive ice cream as 100% good or whatever, right? So then we have to use analytic wisdom to see if that's really the case. Right? And some other examples of this, oftentimes when people harm us, we make it very personal, right? So there's this saying, I think it's from Napoleon Bonaparte, actually. It says, don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. You understand? So I noticed this, just as an example, right? And sometimes, not you, of course, not you, but years ago, let's say, I've been giving little talks here, and then you notice there's someone in the audience playing on their phone or doing something on their phone. Okay. What happens? What? This person is disrespecting me in my lecture, not even paying attention to me? How dare they? Right? And it becomes very personal, right? So first off, we have to think. We actually don't know what they're doing on their phone, right? Maybe their English isn't great, and I've said some word like, reification, right? Or contaminated appropriate aggregates, and they don't know the word. They feel very shy to say, excuse me, what does reifying mean? So instead, they've gotten their English dictionary out on their phone. But actually, it's because they're so engaged in the material, they want to know what I'm saying, and they don't want to disturb the class. Could be, don't know. But immediately, the thought is like, what? They're not paying attention. And then it's about me because they don't respect me, they don't value me, da da da. And the whole story is about me. Or, if I am to meet someone at a certain time, right? And then they show up late. Right? It's because they didn't value me. They don't value my time. If they valued my time, they would have come late. And then, they say, oh, sorry, I have traffic. And then, get more upset because it's like, how long have you been living in Bangalore? There's traffic. Right? It's not a secret that Bangalore has horrible traffic. So you can't use traffic as an excuse. Anyway, so these things we're saying, see, we personalize. And so this thought, don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. It's not that they're trying to, hurt you, right? They could just be incompetent, which again isn't a great thing, but it's at least less grounds to get so upset, right? We treat something differently when it's an accident versus whether it's intentional, and it's not always about you. And sometimes I learned this here living in India. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. So I mentioned to some people last night, okay, I started to study Hindi some years ago. And then I totally fell off the wagon. I didn't follow my own advice about cultivating habits day by day, just fell off. And I let 2 days turn into 2 years. Okay. But anyway, I've started to get back into it. I'm listening to podcasts. And then one day, one lesson they're talking about, maaf kijiye, yeah, which is to say, I'm sorry. And then this lesson, they then kind of have a commentary at the end. And the person said flat out, like, so if someone bumps into you on the train or on the street, don't expect them to say maaf kijiye. Don't expect them to say that they're sorry unless they bump you to the point where you've fallen down. Literally, this person said this in the language lesson. So I'm like, wow, because that was something that really irked me when I moved to India, right? And okay, the person said, "Oh, India is a very crowded place, high population density." So I used to live in New York, London, and it's crowded there too. And but at least someone bumps into you, it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." At least something. Maybe they don't mean it, but they at least say it, right? Then I come to India, get bumped, jostled, not even a sorry. What the heck? So again, taking a more expansive view of the world. And okay, there's different cultural norms. I don't have to impose my way of doing things. Something I hate to say, but some of the bad habits of Indians, also the Tibetans, they've adopted having come to India. And another pet peeve, can I mention? Cutting in line. Oh my gosh. This was one of my great practices in the first few years, especially. First few years, so I've been living in India for, oh man, 17 years. And going to buy a train ticket, now it's all online. I love it. Buy online. Even there's like a 20 rupee convenience fee worth every rupee. Because before you have to wait in the line. And the queues at the railway station were very long. And then people, they're just cutting like you're not even there. Then you see the eye, right? So in any case, it's not about you. It could be just about the other person. And yeah, there's a some kind of statement by Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers. He said, when you wake up in the morning, I don't have it memorized, but it's basically, you think that the people you're going to meet today are going to be rude, are going to be boorish and insulting and bad mannered and all these things. So it's automatically kind of lowering your expectations. Then, there's that saying, your satisfaction in life are your expectations minus reality. So it's okay. Sometimes we have to, view people in a different way, view them all as being, potential Buddhas, viewing all of them as, having Buddha nature. But other times we have to expect, okay, I used to do this too. No, pet peeves, sorry. But getting ripped off by rickshaw drivers, right? Especially as a foreigner here, happens all the time. Then one friend of mine, also a foreigner, gave me really great advice and said, next time you go on your trip, put in your budget 500 rupees for getting ripped off by rickshaw drivers. So, wow, okay. Then, it happens, 50 rupees at a time, maybe. Then you get 10 times. You don't have to be so uptight about it. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, where was I? We cannot read minds, so we actually don't know what's going on with the other person, right? Uh, we don't know what they're looking on at their phone. We don't know what actually caused them to be late. So don't make it about ourselves. And then, yeah, look at the whole situation in a more expansive manner, right? And really question if it's worth getting upset about this. And actually here, the combining it with the recognition of impermanence and death also can be very good. Thinking, well, if it's someone we know, then it could be the last time we have an interaction with them. And so to think, all right, if we're bickering about something, do I really want that to be the last thing I say? Probably not. And many times, it's not that big a deal. So yeah, keep that perspective. So I was saying already, look far ahead in terms of our goals, right? Don't be so uptight that we have to make a change overnight. It's not going to happen. Then last two, this might not be really in this bullet point, but one thing that's also helpful is journaling. Journaling as a means to kind of, at the very least, one author has said it's like a mental windshield wipers, right? Oftentimes we ruminate, overthink things throughout the day, and sometimes just to get it out on paper, okay, I allow myself to kind of process and vent, right, for 5-10 minutes, and now it's gone. Similarly, talking with friends, yes, it can be helpful to vent. Try not to engage in negativity of speech. Means just for lack of a better word, bitching about someone, right? Complaining about someone all the time. But sometimes, okay, what to do, right? And that can at least talking about with a friend. Then if it's a good friend, they'll listen. Sometimes just getting it off your chest is enough. You've kind of processed it. Then, if they're a really good friend, then maybe they can help in some of these ways that we've talked about and help you see the situation in another light. So maybe next time one of your friends comes to you and complains that they were giving a talk and people in the audience were playing on their phones, you can say, hey, you know what? Maybe they're looking up a word in their dictionary so that they could follow your talk better. Who knows? Yeah. So like that, I think that is all I have. So I wanted to open up for questions. And we have a question here during the break. The person didn't have potato chips and chocolate muffins, so they could ask me this question. So I want to get to that question first. And they're saying, and this might be related because we were talking already a little bit about anxiety, and they were saying, it's a bit problematic for them as well. And actually, when the anxiety happens, to try to focus on the breath actually causes more anxiety, and somewhat paradoxical. So I want to expand on this a little bit more. And you see a few things. One is, you see, when we're trying to cultivate this non-judgmental awareness, it's really opening ourselves fully to the whole domain of experience, right? And giving up the attachment to the pleasant, aversion to non-pleasant. Okay, now, a little bit early on in the practice, okay, we have still a subtle aversion, or maybe not so subtle, for the attachment or whatever negative emotion it is, right? So we have the anxiety, and then we're like, okay, I'm going to watch the anxiety. But inside, we're thinking, and just watching it, it's going to go away because we have aversion to it, right? You know what I mean? So rather than being truly impartial, we're using a kind of fake impartiality as a means of disguising our aversion. Okay. So then, we meditate, and then it's like, okay, I've been watching you, anxiety, and you're still here. You're supposed to go away, right? And that can make it worse, right? So we have to even open up to the anxiety about anxiety. And we have to open up that even though we're trying to watch, well, it's not changing as we want, and be okay with that. So it's like every further level, it's like, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. I accept, I accept, I accept, right? And allowing everything to process. Okay. That's one comment about the meditation technique. But it's also worth mentioning, especially for anxiety. It's a very difficult problem in modern society because we're hyperstimulated, and we have all sorts of demands. We have our phones that are constantly beeping and buzzing and vying for our attention. So, by the way, it's good practice to turn off notifications, and oh, is this on? Is this on? Okay. Yeah, cut off for a second. And not be at the kind of beck and call of everyone. Allow ourselves to have the phone as a tool for us. So one thought to overall help with the anxiety is, we have to, let's mention this. A lot of the anxiety, it's this fight or flight mode that we get into. And, biologically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, we're on the lookout for predators. And any kind of sign of danger, we're triggered to, fight, or flight means leave. And this is very stressful on the body. So one thing that is called the sympathetic nervous system that's in charge of doing that. But there's what they call the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the reverse of that. And one way to activate that is to do deep breathing exercises, and especially emphasizing the exhalation. So one method, you inhale for 4, you hold your breath for 7, and you exhale for 8. Right? Emphasizing the exhalation, because it's during the exhalation that your parasympathetic nervous system is going to be sort of activated. If you do this, I noticed, because I was having a little issue with blood pressure, but you do this even for a few minutes, and it can substantially reduce the blood pressure. It induces a state of relaxation. And so, some of it is, the body and mind connection, and we have to use that knowledge to help ourselves. Okay. So that's what I want to say about that. now I want to open up for more questions. Chat. Okay. So we have the scrolling is not happening well. I'll try to scroll up a little bit and I go all the way to the top. And let's try to scroll down, it goes all the way to the bottom. Okay, here we go. What are some Buddhist perspectives on feeling complete and whole by oneself? So I'm not sure I understand the question. Does that mean as opposed to like being with a partner or being with a friend, like when one is in solitude? Okay, we're gonna. Okay, yes. Okay, and so yes, that is the sense in which the question was asked. So, there's a couple things I'd like to say about this. On the one hand, as the Dalai Lama often says, we are social animals. We are social animals means, you know, we have societies, we have relationships with people, we actually thrive by cooperating. We can, you know, do more in a society than we can do more on our own, right? That always there. And then also, we talked about in this very, in some of the hints about how to deal with our afflictions, that, you know, the good influence that positive people can have on our development and well-being. And even when they look in the kind of long-term drivers of happiness and satisfaction in life, then relationships is a big part of that. Now, that is all true. That's all there. And particularly, yeah, having good friends and people that care about you, that are there for you in the sense of, you know, in your times of need, that is definitely a good thing. Okay, on the other side, then there's this whole tradition in Buddhism about monasticism, right? And taking vows of celibacy for life, right? And on the other hand, too, I mean, generations of yogis and masters who would retreat to isolation. In Tibet, they would even, you know, go to a cave and have someone else put a boulder in front of the door of the cave and totally isolate themselves from any human contact. And even today, some people, they go on retreats and they don't interact with the outside world at all for years. So, now I will say this. The Dalai Lama often mentions the story where he went to Spain and Montserrat. Montserrat is close to Barcelona. It's a Catholic hermitage on the top of a mountain. And there's, you know, a few mountains nearby, and there was a monk, a Christian monk that he met, who had been in isolation for 5 years. And when His Holiness met this monk, the monk was so he's like warm-hearted and very present. His Holiness could really feel that. And His Holiness was questioning about his retreat and all this, and then asked, well, what were you meditating on? And the monk said, love. Right? So you see, this feeling of connection with others is primarily about our mind, as with everything in Buddhism, right? It's primarily about our mind rather than it being about the presence of someone else. So if one cultivates the sense of, loving kindness and connection with others, then even in the isolated cave, one can meditate on this feeling of connection with everyone, on all beings, and the universality of the sentient being's experience. If one doesn't have that, then I think I mentioned it last time I came here. But at one point when I was living in New York, right, such a busy city, through my commute, I'd walk through Grand Central Station, the kind of main railway station in New York City. And at one point, like, since I was always in a rush and I would one day I noticed I walked so efficiently through the crowd of people that I wasn't even it was kind of like an obstacle course or like a slalom course, right? I was just weaving through the people. And it was like I was such in the zone that I wasn't even viewing them as people, but rather just obstacles in my way for me to getting to my office. So there's all those people, no sense of even wanting to be connected with them. Then, even you're in the city with 8 million people or however many, then still the feelings of isolation can be there. So, what does that then mean for us? For most of us, right, all of you are lay people, then, and even actually in the first part of my monastic career, I didn't put enough emphasis on having a support network of people around me. That's one of my big mistakes, actually. This thought of, okay, we have to do it alone. I'm, responsible. I can do it, right? So there's that, I think, an African proverb. They say, if you want to do something quickly, do it yourself. Do it by yourself. If you want to, if you want to go quickly, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others. So a little bit impatient at the beginning. Now recognizing how important it is to have a good support network to go far. But even with that, right, this dichotomy of, okay, you have your support network, you might even have your spouse or whatever romantic relationship you're in. There's always that little, adage of the Buddha that all meetings end in separation, right? So even that meeting is going to be impermanent, right? Even you're going to separate at one point. That in and of itself is a two-sided coin. So as we were saying before, to think the time of this person is limited. Therefore, this might be the last time I interact with this person. Do I really want our last interaction to be fighting over why you didn't wash the dishes? or whatever it is. Probably not. Probably not. Mm. Am I answering your question? So this is the thing. I'm not sure I answered your question, but maybe I said some things that will help. Maybe, you know, what we were saying, if you're not happy with 200 shoes, you're not going to be happy with 201 pairs of shoes. So we do need a kind of inner love for ourselves, comfort with ourselves, who we are, right? Just a kind of everything is okay with who I am right now. It's okay. Knowing, yes, still traversing the path, but it's okay. Then the people we interact with, not to have kind of hopes and expectations that they're somehow going to complete me, right? Was that in a movie? Maybe. Yeah. You complete me. Jerry Maguire, right? No. If you're looking for someone to complete you from outside, not going to happen. That's the 201 pair of shoes. But from that, you know, you're an adult, you're complete. This other person is also a sentient being dealing with the various problems that samsara faces. Okay, you've come together through various causes and conditions. Help each other as much as you can. Like that. So I got a clarification. I wasn't talking about his question, but he's mostly concerned about how one can develop a sense of self-esteem and feeling complete even without the validation of others that is rooted in Buddhist ideas. So this is something, right? This is also something. You see, there's a saying of the two witnesses, rely on the inner witness. Okay, there's an outer witness and an inner witness. The outer witness is, you know, all the people out there, you know, and they come up to you, oh, you're so nice, or oh, you gave such a great talk, or oh, good job, give you a gold star, pat on the back, high five, whatever you want. Okay. The inner witness is you know. You know what you've done. You have a better kind of assessment of that. And so, you know, just like if 100 people come and say you're the worst person in the world, that's not necessarily true. Same if 100 people say you're the best person in the world. Okay. So now, one notable exception is if you have a kind of relationship with a teacher that then knows your mind and sees a little bit deeper into kind of your reality, then I would pay a little bit more credence. But it's not that, you see, that my teacher praised me so I feel good, right? But you know, I did good things. I have transformed in this way. My teacher notices that, and therefore I'm getting praise for that, right? You understand the difference? So the inner work, that's the real thing. Because as we were saying before, with the teacher being the assassin for the ego, sometimes we'll do all that good work. We're looking for validation. We're looking for the gold star, and they won't give it to us. Right? And that itself could be a teaching, not to rely on this external validation. So I think that that answers your question better. And I answered, well, I answered questions that weren't asked. Okay. Okay, there's a question there. Why are there good things and bad things? Well, so even good and bad is a dependent arising. So remember how we were saying we don't want suffering and we want happiness and want well-being? Okay. Then that kind of natural inclination, right? It's there rooted in our experience. Then the things that lead to happiness, fulfillment, we also consider them good. The things that lead to more suffering, we consider them bad. But that's just kind of how it is, you know. The Buddha didn't create karma. The Buddha didn't create good and bad, suffering and pleasure, but rather just explained kind of how things are. So that's what I think. Let's see, can I talk about looking at the whole situation? Or looking far ahead can help you fight the afflictions? Yeah. So, right. So looking at the whole situation means to look at all the kind of causes and conditions that came about for that situation to happen. And so this is what I have been talking about when someone cuts in front of us in line, to think, okay, well, maybe they were coming from a different cultural perspective where staying in line nicely is not emphasized, right? Or whatever it is, trying to, you see, empathize with what the other person is going through, their own background, and yeah, not just look at things from our own perspective and very much fixating on that. Looking far ahead, this is what I was talking about with the overall project, the goal of becoming enlightened, and therefore having patience with ourselves in our progress and not being so impatient. So probably that it's not maybe the best to put as a bullet point under this, but I wanted to kind of have this be the last slide in the PowerPoint presentation. So I just put everything there. Okay. Okay, then we have a question. There's a question about, are there any helpful deities or Buddhas for destructive emotions? And yeah, the answer is all the time. Right? We're saying all the Buddhist practices, in one way or another, are ways to subdue the destructive emotions. So all of these all the various Buddhas are helpful in destructive emotions. Of course, we have the Buddha of compassion, and compassion is the sort of antidote for anger. And we have the Buddha of wisdom, Manjushri, and that is more of an antidote for ignorance. But in general, all of the Buddhas have the same level of realization. They have the same qualities. So, yeah. Okay. And then lastly, any chanting to help reduce the impact of destructive emotions when simply observing them is not helping. So yeah, you see, mantra, yeah, you guys know, man, they say, the mind, tra is protecting the mind, right? So here, rather than ruminating over something and causing the afflictions to increase more and more, right? Then we do the first step, watching, trying to let it dissolve in its own, on its own, how do you say, on its own, right? Just like the drawings on the surface of the water, right? It'll dissolve back. Okay, maybe that doesn't work. Now, one thing that's not helpful, right, is to follow after those conceptual runaway train, right? And to, think, oh, this person did that, oh, they're disrespecting me, oh, I can't believe they did this. And to follow all that is going to make the affliction get stronger and stronger. So anything we can do to stop that process is going to be helpful. And therefore, on some level, to repeat and get our mind absorbed in a mantra can help that, right? On just that level. And of course, there's deeper levels when we get into actual Vajrayana practice and deity yoga and these kinds of things. But I think that's outside the scope of this weekend's talk. But just for now, if I assume the person that has asked this question has some experience with mantras before, and the sort of best, easiest, and best mantra for many of us will just be the mantra of the Buddha of compassion, Om Mani Padme Hum. So a very simple practice you can do is to visualize Avalokiteshvara in space in front of you if you haven't had the initiation. And not just recite the mantra, but as you recite the mantra, to think that from Avalokiteshvara's heart, light rays come out to all the 10 directions. Those light rays purify all sentient beings of their anger, of all their mental afflictions, of all their negative karma, all their suffering of body and mind. And yeah, meditate on that light. And you can also think that nectar comes and enters the crown of your head, and it's like washing. And that nectar, then whatever affliction you're having, gets purified by that, and sort of it leaves your body in the form of kind of polluted water, and you're clean, you're cleansed of all that. So that can help. Now, important, at the end of that recitation, you've done the visualization, and then try to think, oh, I'm now purified of that affliction. Right? So we might say fake it till we make it, but it's helpful. It's helpful. Okay. Anything else? Oh, there's one question here. Number 9 in the afflictions, isn't it necessary? Okay, so this is what I meant. Let's go back. Oops, no. Yikes. Okay, number 9 was a belief in the supremacy of ethics and religious discipline. Isn't that necessary? Okay, so here, we were saying that those 6, we'll have to get into a lot of other considerations, and I didn't want to do that, but since you asked, I'm going to answer your question. So don't just take the words here at face value. What that one means, a belief in the supremacy of ethics and religious discipline, it means actually a distorted view, a distorted mode of ethics and religious discipline. So there's stories like this, where there are some yogis that generate some level of clairvoyance, right? They then see that in their last life, they're reborn as a dog. And they think that because they're reborn as a dog before, they're now a human. So then they think, okay, therefore in this life, I have to bark like a dog. And that will enable me to get a human rebirth in my next life. Okay. Some think, all right, negative karma, I have to purify all that. So those that lie on a bed of nails, they're thinking, I'm purifying my negative karma. That's the way to liberation. Okay. So those are wrong views. Those aren't the real way to gain liberation, right? The real way to gain liberation is to analyze the self and discover self-existence, all that. So that's what number 9 means. Okay. Is that it? Wow. Okay. So we'll end it there. And I see also that instead of paying attention to the lecture, someone was writing about the next programs, but I'm not taking it personally. They had a good motivation to advertise further teachings to help sending beings. Totally joking. Totally joking. Okay. So let us now dedicate the merit. So all the positive energy that we create in our time today, may we and all sending beings quickly be freed of all the disturbing emotions, develop all our good qualities, and become fully enlightened as quickly as possible. And then we dedicate for long lives to the spiritual teachers like the Divine Lama, Advanced Rinpoche. We can dedicate, let's please dedicate also for all the beings who are sick, that they will be free from all their ailments, all those beings who recently died. They will be born in the pure land of the Buddha where they can achieve enlightenment. Oh, and sorry, those who are sick, not only that they're free from their ailments, but they then, after they recover, if they haven't met with the Dharma yet, may they meet with the Mahayana Dharma and achieve enlightenment in this life. If they have met with the Dharma before, may they also achieve enlightenment in this life. And then all the various problems in the world, war, natural disasters, famine, economic problems, environmental problems. All these may the incident end and may never occur again anywhere in the universe from now on. Okay, so maybe that's all for now. We'll see you next time. And yeah, thanks for coming. Namaste. Tashi